What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Saturday night, everybody. Okay, so it's finally happening. I'm very glad that it's finally happening. Honestly, I don't care what people think. I really like other creators and their work. I really like the work that, for example, my friends from the night shift do. I really love Sander Jones's stuff at the Dreamlab Motel. I really love Dan Cleary's stuff at Others from Another Mother. I really love the bigger podcasts too. I love Area 52 that I'm repping right now. Thank you, Chris. But my favorite is Jesse Michels and American Alchemy. And he's a really smart guy. He's a history major and he reads a lot of books. He talks to everybody. Some of the best interviews I've seen on the topic came from his channel. And I just, everything he does on his channel, I really like, even though I sometimes don't agree with some of his guests, which happened recently because there's a lot of stuff that Jason Georgiani does and thinks that I definitely do not agree with. But nonetheless, he is an interesting fellow. And Jesse always handles those very well. I didn't like the Stephen Greer interview either because Greer kind of wanted to take control over the conversation, and that wasn't cool. But tomorrow, there is like a closing the circle kind of moment for Jesse because recently he was on Joe Rogan and he spoke about a lot of different things, including the tridactyls. So tomorrow he announced that he's going to get the biggest guest he's ever gotten on American Alchemy. And I'm really happy for him. So I want to talk about that a little bit. This is going to come out tomorrow, I believe. I don't know if it's going to come out for members first and then for the rest of us peasants, but what's the big news? Jesse Michels got a scoop and an interview with Joe Rogan. They spoke at the mothership, inside of the mothership, which is the new set that Jesse's building. And he says, tomorrow we make internet history. Joe's sweatshirt says it all. And if you guys haven't seen this, the sweatshirt has actually Betty and Barney Hill on it. So they're potentially going to talk about the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case, which I think is the most famous abduction case in history. There are many that are really interesting and really famous too, but this one has to take the cake because of everything that they speak about and the star systems and the regressions and the whole race aspect of it that was happening at the time was also an added component to this story, which is really interesting. And I know that Demi Moore and I think it's Coleman Domingo, I think it is, they're gonna interpret Betty and Barney Hill in a new, I don't know if it's a miniseries or a film. I think it's Netflix. So there's a lot of stuff happening. And the episode was recorded today on Saturday, but I think they're gonna release it either tomorrow or Monday. And I just gotta before you guys like jump attacking Joe, because besides Jesse, I also really like Joe, and I've grown listening to his podcast. Like I've been listening to Joe since at least 2013, 2014, and I really enjoy it because I'm a comedy nut. I really love comedy, and I just like that whole scene of comedians. And Joe always did some of the best podcasts, and then he started doing more cerebral podcasts. He had Graham Hancock, he had Randall Carlson, he had a lot of different podcasts with Elon Musk. There's a lot of people. He had Paul Stamets, who I love, Dr. Rick Doblin, who I also love. Those are two prominent members of the psychedelic movement today. And Joe always goes out of his way to speak to everybody. There are some times when he gets too excited and he wants to talk a little bit over people. It's Joe Rogan, you know? And another aspect of Joe that I love is that right now, there's really nobody who has a bigger influence than him. It's safe to say that right now, Joe Rogan is the king of media. Like, well, I don't think Howard Stern deserved that title when he had it, to be honest with you, because I really didn't like the way he treated women in his show, especially some of the actresses that were really uncomfortable with the way he treated them. And Joe has never done that. He's always been very respectful to everybody, I think. And he's been attacked quite a bit. And despite all of that, he always takes the high road. And I really like that about him. That really speaks to me all the time. He also dares to do really strong debates, which is also very commendable. It's not easy to lead a debate that is going to get heated inevitably. And the Flint Dibble versus Graham Hancock debate was interesting, I think. And there are other controversial guests he's had over the years, but he's not afraid of like talking to anybody, and that's admirable in my opinion. And now that he's going on Jesse's podcast, we can now easily say that Joe, hands down, has had the best guests about the UFO topic that any podcaster has had. He has the Bob Lazar story. He has Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp a couple of times. He had Jacques Vallée. He had Dr. Hal Puthoff, James Fox a couple of times. There's a lot of people that already spoke to Joe. Even Dr. Greer was already on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he keeps claiming that it was suppressed or censored. I just think Joe just didn't want to put it in there, if you ask me. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel. But for me, and this is actually also closing the circle kind of moment for me, because the topic and the interview that got me interested in this and UFOs, because I already had a couple of times when I went down the rabbit hole, and for a week I did nothing but look at UFO stuff, but I wasn't fully involved as I am today until this interview that dropped. And I'm going to show you a couple of clips of it, because what the hell? I've never shown clips of this before on the show. And I think it's important and interesting. And just so you know, what convinced me that this was real? Well, it's arguably one of the most credible people within the movement, pilot, one of the Top Gun pilots, actually, from arguably the most famous UFO case in modern history, which is the Tic Tac off of the coast of California on board of the USS Nimitz. Commander Fravor, Alex Dietrich, and a bunch of other people from the Navy encountered a Tic Tac shaped object that Commander Fravor engaged. And the way he told the story was riveting to me, because we're talking about a trained observer, a trained pilot, one of the best in the world. And he was telling you, based on his experience and based on his knowledge of this, that this is real. That was the first time I was like, okay, so if this guy who is trained is saying that there is something to this, I need to look into it. So, and that is thanks to Joe, because Joe had him on. So the two stories that I found the most interesting were two, besides his account of the Tic Tac event. One was when the first time I ever heard that this object underwater swallowed a torpedo. And the other one is how many groups he had been speaking to after the 2017 article, which is when one of those videos came out that turned out to be the Tic Tac event. So let's watch the first and then the second one.
And I worked, I still do it, but I was doing oil and gas at the time on a contract. And one of the guys, the story came out, and he was a Navy helicopter pilot. And he comes in, he goes, dude, hey, can I talk to you, man? I go, what about? He goes, dude, I got to talk to you. I said, what do you want to talk to me about? He says, dude, you know your UFO? He said, yeah. He goes, I had a similar experience. I said, what's that? He said, he was flying CH-53s, which is a big lift, heavy lift that the Marine Corps uses. The Navy uses it for certain things. And when they go off of, for the East Coast, they do a lot of shooting off of, at the time, it was off of Puerto Rico. We had Roosevelt Roads that they ended up closing. But he was flying out of there. And, you know, you got super clear Caribbean water. And they have these things, they're called BQMs. They fly around, and then when they're all done, because they'll fly towards the ships, and the ship can, sorry about that, they can track with the radar. And then they also do, in the ships or submarines shoot torpedoes, they're called telemetry rounds. So they gather all the data on what the torpedo is doing underwater, and then they blow ballast, and this thing will come to the surface and float, and then they go pick them up, and then they can extract all the data out of them. So they do it for both. So he said the first time they're out and they're going to pick up this BQM. And those things, when they're flying, they're done, a parachute comes out and they got to go, they hook it up, the helo drops the swimmer in the water. He goes and hooks this whole thing up, and then they hoist the whole thing up and fly back, and then they extract the data. So He says he's sitting in the front. In helicopters, there's, CH-53, you can actually see down by your feet, just like typical, like you go to Hawaiian rides, because you can see when you're touching down. So you got really good visibility out of those things, and you can stick your head out the window too, because you're just kind of hanging out. He says he's going on there, and they're getting this thing hooked up, and as he's looking down, because they're, 50 feet above the water, he sees kind of this dark mass coming up from the depths. And they start to hoist the diver up, and they've got the BQM, and as they hoist it up, he says, and he's looking at this thing going, what the hell is that? And then it just goes back down underwater. It just like, once they pull the kid and the BQM out of the water, this object descends back into the depths. So he thinks, well, that was pretty weird. So he goes out, he says, not too long later, a few months later, he's out and he's picking up a torpedo. So he says they hooked the diver up on the winch and they're lowering him in. And as he's looking down, he sees this big, massive, he goes, it's not a submarine. He's seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. This big object, kind of circular, he says, is coming up from the depths. And he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up. And the diver's like a few feet from the water. So they reverse the winch, and the diver's thinking, what the hell's going on? And he's getting pulled up, and all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater, and the object just descended back down into the depths. And they never recovered it.
Yeah. When I heard that from that guy, I was like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, even some of the skeptics that are around and debunkers, it's hard for them to debunk this guy because he's like at the top, at the very top. And I don't know, this is the other clip that I found really interesting to share besides the Tic Tac account.
But I got within a half mile of this thing, which is, people go, well, a half mile is pretty far away. Again, not when you're flying an airplane. Half mile is like really tight.
When they bring you in to have these conversations with high-level government officials, how long are these conversations?
So I went to I've talked to 3 different groups of people.
This is post the New York Times article? So the New York Times article comes out in 2017.
Yes.
And then our government.
The other pilot that was involved had been to D.C. multiple times. This is how I got in touch with Lou. She had called me and said, hey, I need to talk to you. So I called her and I said, what's going on? She says, hey, has anyone called you about the Tic Tac? And I said, no. She goes, I've been to the Pentagon like a half dozen times, and they'll take me in and anywhere from Starbucks to, inside of a vault. And she goes, and they'll talk to me about the story, and then they'll show me a picture. Something goes to look like this. And then she gets pretty frustrated and goes, we call it the Tic Tac because it looked like a Tic Tac. What part don't you get? Go get a thing of Tic Tacs and look at it.
When they're saying, did it look like this, are they showing actual crafts that they have?
No, not pictures that they have, but like a video from someone else. Like they'd show the gimbal video. Hey, did it look like this?
Okay.
And it was no. So, and that's when I told her, I said, well, just tell this guy that you're talking to, just give him my name and number. I go, I'll talk to him. It's not a big deal to me. And that started. So when I got asked, multiple times to go down and talk to people. One of them was supposed to be 20 minutes, and these are important people. Getting 20 minutes of some of these folks' time is like, that's a huge deal.
He's talking about senators, obviously.
So we went in thinking, okay, we're going to do the thing, 20 minutes, and then we're in, and an hour and a half later, we came out. That's the interest of, and there were some, you get the group, the folks that come in and out, but there's a few that just sat there and were enamored by what we were saying. Like, you're joking. We're like, no, this is all real. These are pretty senior officials that are taking the time out of their day to take this serious, to go, maybe we do need to put a little emphasis on this. If literally, if something can just show up at will and do whatever it wants, and I'd probably at least pay attention.
Now that Joe is going into one of my favorite UFO podcasts, that's going to be really, really interesting. I want to see how the conversation goes. I want to see what Jesse has to ask him. I'm betting he's going to ask him about some of the interviews he's done, because that's what I would ask him. But maybe he's going to ask him something else. But I don't know what you guys think about this. Joe doesn't really do many interviews at all. Like, he will do some for his comedian friends, but he rarely ever goes in any other spheres that is not comedy. So he's doing this for Jesse, clearly, because they've become good friends. So let me know what you think about Joe Rogan going on the Jesse Michels show. What do you think they're going to talk about? What do you think it means that Joe is wearing a Betty and Barney Hill hoodie? Interesting, right? Maybe they're going to announce something. I don't know. But let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, hype, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most. So thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can also become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated. So thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Joe Rogan, always. Bye.